Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Rezwana Manjur and I'm the editor-in-chief for Marketing Interactive. Now, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We were really hoping to do this in person with all of you, but at Grab and Marketing Interactive, your safety comes first for us. So we're hoping to bring you a jam-packed agenda full of useful information, all at the comfort of your own homes. Now, this afternoon, we'll be talking about the evolving consumer habits and, of course, how we as marketers can crack the consumer code. It comes as no surprise to most of us that the global pandemic has accelerated changes to consumers' behaviors and, of course, their priorities. As we comfortably position ourselves in this new world, the current world, it is safe to say that many of these trends are here to stay. Some habits, such as streaming online or food delivery that we thought would be spikes and trends last year, have now clearly established themselves as part and parcel of our everyday lives. On that note, we'd like to get a sense of how you, our audience members, have seen your own behavior change. So I hope you'll join me as we flash a poll question on your screens. We can set the context of today through your answers. So can we take a look at the poll, please? Okay, so the question is, which of the following now reflects the change in your grocery and FMCG product shopping behavior as compared to in the past? So we want to know what is the main change that you've seen for yourself as a consumer and what you're seeing if you're a marketer in terms of your target audience as well. The options are A, I don't shop offline anymore. B, I shop online more now, but still do so both online and offline. And C, there's no change to my shopping behavior. We see a lot of the answers coming in. So once again, the options are A, I don't shop offline anymore. B, I shop online more often now, but still do so both online and offline. And C, there's no change to my shopping behavior. Okay, we're seeing the numbers coming in. Most of you are like me. I was shopping way before the pandemic online as well. But, during the pandemic, I was shopping even more online. So I see that coming in quite a fair bit with 80% of you choosing option B. There are a couple of you who say that there hasn't been too much of a change in your shopping behavior. And some of you say that you don't shop offline at all anymore. This is really, really fascinating stuff, guys. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, as you can see, we saw many shifts last year that absolutely challenged marketers to rethink their consumer-centric marketing strategy and what that means for their businesses. They're now finding new, innovative ways to launching new products and aligning strategies across channels to ensure a consistent customer experience. Now, to walk us through some of these rapid changes that we're seeing in the industry, we have an expert lineup of panelists with us this afternoon. Starting off with David Porter, Vice President of Global Media at Unilever. Hi, David.
Hi.
Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Rezwana.
Joining us is Angela Liu, CEO of Singapore and Greater China Group Chief Growth Officer at Yo's. Hi, Angela.
Hi, hello.
You're in a lovely green color as well.
Well, yeah, thank you very much.
And we have Nikhil Rao, Senior Marketing Director at Mondelēz International. Hi, Nikhil.
Hello, Rez.
I've been buying a lot of Mondelēz candies and goodies and biscuits, so
Thank you. Good to hear.
And last but not least, we've got Dave Young, Regional Head of Direct Sales Organization over at Grab. Hi, Dave.
Good to see you again, Rez.
You're all the way over there, but I can still see you clearly. So it's really good to see you again.
Yeah, we're kind of shouting around the corner of these barriers to keep us safe. But
we absolutely are. Thank you so much for hosting us at this lovely Grab office as well. Now, I'm going to start off with our first question. How have digital trends and changing buying behavior affected your business or your client's business? Can I start with you, David?
Sure. And I think the people on the call have just answered the first part of that question for us, and that's pretty typical across the region, although it's not evenly distributed. Across Southeast Asia, typically Unilever has 40 to 50 brands per market that we actively market. And that, although that brings a lot of challenges, it also brings a big benefit when things get tough, because as the public pivots from, as they did, deodorant to hand sanitizer, and I hope they'll go back to deodorant sometime soon. But as that happens, we were able to pivot with them and to move quickly. And the same thing happened in terms of shopping habits. So as you guys started to go online, we were already there with you in e-commerce. That's where the F in fast-moving consumer goods comes from, I guess. But we definitely sped up in this process. And that speed that I think the whole packaged goods industry reacquainted themselves with is now stuck. So I think that's something that will carry as we come out of the pandemic. The other big thing for us has been, there's a Kantar study recently of the most touched brands in the world, and of the top 15, 7 of them are Unilevers. And so if you just think about the way people are now turning to mobile and QR codes and shopping from home, contactless, those amazing huge numbers of touch points are things that you're going to start seeing packaged goods companies really leverage in the future.
Thank you for sharing that, David. Nikhil, what about you? What are some of the biggest shifts you've seen?
Yeah, I think shopping and media are the most affected spaces, right? And to the insight that you shared, Riz, I think we have been doing well. A lot of consumers have, as they cannot eat outside or have treats outside, they've been kind of shifting to a lot of Mondelēz brands when they want to have a snack. So brands like Oreo or Cadbury have been doing well. And in terms of the shopping environment, we see clearly, as the poll showed, a shift towards online. We are investing like never before on e-commerce, but also a shift to modern trade. I think in a lot of Southeast Asia, we see a marked shift from people shopping at wholesale or the pasars or the wet markets and traditional trade to supermarkets and mini marts, like where they have a higher degree of safety. That's one big shift that's happening. In terms of media, yes, I think there are a lot of interesting trends in addition to what David mentioned. I think, for example, one very peculiar trend is we have never seen such a high search for recipes online. We have been jumping on that. We have found that Oreo is a very interesting recipe. People make everything from mug cakes to ice creams to cake batiks with it, and we have been leveraging it for Ramadan, for the summer vacations. And also, I think the other place where we are shifting a lot of investment is short-form video. TikTok is seeing an explosive growth in the region. And finally, I think, which will make Dave happy, I think food delivery has gone up. We're doing a lot of work with Grab and a few of your competitors on how do we get chocolate in a good, safe, cold way to consumers? How do we sample through Grab?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Dave, walk us through what are some of the shifts. You have worked with a myriad of clients, right? Are there any commonalities in terms of trends?
Yeah, sure. Some of the other speakers already touched on this, but this shift to digital and the purchase of FMCG products, we were almost forced to it. Well, not almost, we were forced to it. It was necessity. But I think what we're seeing with behavior is we're shifting from necessity to an acknowledgement of convenience. And the reason I say that is what we're seeing across the board is we're seeing a broadening on a number of levels. We're seeing a broadening of the times in which people are actually using Grab services, whether that's food or mart, go from peak periods of 2 to 8, which is a pretty broad band, to 10 to 8. We're also seeing the diversity of the basket checkouts increase in terms of number of products, types of products, and overall basket value. And ultimately, what I think is this shift, this necessity to order these products and services online is absolutely going to stick simply for the convenience of it. So that's really what we're seeing is people are actually understanding that digital can not only keep them safe, but make it more convenient at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think we never thought there would be such a huge acceleration in terms of delivery, right? We didn't expect it, but now I can't imagine a world without it almost. I want to turn to our audience members right now. Now, we've got something exciting for you. We're going to flash a question up on screen, but the first 10 people from our virtual audience who answer correctly in the chat will receive a $10 Grab food voucher. So get your thinking caps on and your fingers ready, okay? Are you guys ready? Okay, I'm about to flash the questions. In the last P2HA in Singapore, for those of you not in Singapore, that's a little bit of a mini lockdown for us. What are the top 3 categories of goods in GrabMart that saw the largest growth in sales? So in the last P2HA in Singapore, what are the top 3 categories of goods in GrabMart that saw the largest growth in sales? Okay, the options are beverage, toilet paper, and instant food. We saw so many articles about toilet paper, guys. Oh my God. Option B is ice cream, cakes, and alcohol. And option C is cakes, beverage, and durian. Okay, we're seeing the answers come in. We have a diversity in answers. Nikhil, let me ask you, what were you ordering? Of the three, which would be you?
I think definitely C. And different kinds of beverage, not so much the durian.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I didn't know you were a durian fan. Angela, what about you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do order a lot more coffee and bubble tea.
Oh my God, you are a girl that I need to hang out with. I am also addicted to coffee and bubble tea. If possible, I'm ordering coffee flavored bubble tea. So that's something else. Okay, we're seeing all the answers come in. Dave, do you know what the correct answer is?
I do, Rez, and it appears that Grab users like to party because it's number B, or letter B, number B. Letter B, ice cream, cakes, and alcohol. I'm a little embarrassed to say maybe we're informing gluttony. At the same time, though, in our defense, we're also informing gluten-free.
Okay.
You see what I did there? What I mean by that is we also saw a surge in healthy food options. Fresh fruit, in terms of orders of fresh fruit on GrabMart, have increased 45% over a very short period of time. So once again, we're seeing a diversity of things, but once again, it appears our users like to party, cake, alcohol.
Yep, absolutely. I'm so surprised that coffee is in there because I've been incessantly ordering coffee. I thought
Absolutely.
My orders alone would have actually topped the charts.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to ask you, Angela, this question. With COVID very raw and still quite traumatic for many of us, how do you think brands should be communicating with consumers?
Yeah. So I mean that during the COVID period, I think when we talk about communicating with consumer, there are two angles that I see that. One is the content and then the touch point. So where do we communicate? So in terms of the content, well, I think this period is a difficult period. So empathy, the positive message, and also so emotional connection, it plays a very part in how we communicate with the consumer. Well, content-wise, of course, it will come with a lot more short-form videos, and also that more dynamic and also in-time communication content. Well, touch points, of course, we all know that it's more shifting to the digital different touch points. There are many different platforms that we can also use to communicate. Well, we can see that how can we still maintain the certain reach and frequency we reach to our consumer. So then, of course, from Yoast, we also apply those in the way how we communicate with the consumers.
Thanks for sharing that. Dave, any thoughts on this? How do you think that your clients should be communicating with their consumers?
Well, actually, Nikhil hit on a point, and then I'll even cross over to the next panel or two over to David, in which there's actually an opportunity, I think, for brands to entertain and educate at this moment. What we did with Unilever and Knorr's in the Philippines is we actually worked with the team in the Philippines to create an ad experience in which, with Knorr's, there was an opportunity for us to teach a couple recipes, right? There's an increase in people cooking at home because everyone's at home. And so this was a really cool execution done by Unilever in the Philippines, wherein you would select Knorr's, but then there would be pre-populated recipes in which your basket would also pre-populate with exactly the ingredients that you needed to cook a delicious and healthy home meal.
Nice.
So I think as marketers, you're always trying to figure out, how do I get people's attention? In the mobile world, it's like, okay, how do we communicate in 3 and 6 and 10 seconds? And I still think that's important. But there's actually a unique opportunity right now with everybody at home to potentially get deeper and longer engagements. But you need to figure out how you can add value or entertain in that moment, right? So there's a chance for a longer conversation if done correctly right now.
Thanks, Dave. And how are you balancing that need to stay relevant, but also demonstrating compassion or empathy, because you don't want to overdo it either, right? You don't want to be in their face all the time. You don't want to hit them when they're not interested. David, you want to walk us through this?
Thanks. And it comes back to the previous conversation. I think, frankly, I think a lot of brands lost their way a bit in the early days of the pandemic. And these are well-meaning, well-marketed, great global brands. And you've probably seen some of the fast-cut edits that have been out on LinkedIn and other platforms. But there was an awful lot, a very, very large number of brands saying basically, hey, we're here for you. And that came across as, a little bit misguided, slightly tone deaf, and frankly inauthentic. And I'm not saying it was intended that way, but that, in sensitive times, people perhaps react more extremely to this stuff. And it was a really good reminder to us at Unilever about the importance of purpose and meaning it.
Yeah.
And I can spend an hour on a panel talking about Unilever's belief in purpose, and you've probably heard it all before. So I won't repeat all of that, but we made an early decision that if you had a brand that was part of the solution, then talk about it and show how you're helping. And if you're adjacent, someone who can entertain or someone who can introduce recipes to people, that's legitimate too. But otherwise, it's probably best to just keep quiet for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's paid off. And when we talk about purpose, we split it into two parts. We talk about brand say, what you believe in, and brand do, what you do. And we're finding, especially in tough times, brand do is by far the most important part of this. So are you really walking the walk? And it's that authenticity that has the business impact. And that's why we believe that purpose really does pay.
Yeah.
But you've got to see it through.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, because we saw a huge number of EDM blasts go out during the pandemic, right? Reminders and reaching out to people. And a lot of times it was coming in from brands that you might have used once, twice, but you signed up for and so there's a very distinct difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
And I think going over to the side of sympathy, if you're too far in, it just comes across a little bit fake as well. And consumers are very cynical these days. They're very smart. They can pick up on these things pretty easily. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Angela, what about you? What do you think about this?
Yeah, so definitely agree with what David mentioned. I mean that doing is a lot more better compared to saying and to talking about it. So that's why we did a lot of the CSR, the sponsorship and the product donation, because I think that especially during this difficult time, we will need to show our support and also how we can support the community, no matter whether it is from emotional perspective or actually really doing something.
Yeah.
So that is a very important part. And also, of course, going back to our core value, serving up goodness. And so that's why being part of the Singaporeans' everyday life, we put a lot of emphasis for the National Day, Chinese New Year, which people are looking at reunion, which is sometimes a lot more difficult at this period. National Day, we do the special editions to echo the spirit of we can do it. So those are the type of the communication that we are doing to show that we are supporting the community, and also we are behind all of the people around here.
Yeah, fair enough. The other question that I had for you, Angela, is what are you doing to kind of focus on identifying your target audience's needs and understanding what is driving them? It's very important to really understand them before you communicate, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean that the existing needs we can get in various channels from the consumer research, from the digital data, and also big data mapping. So from all of those channels, we can see that what are the consumers buying it. Looking into the comments or social listening, we can get to understand that what is the reason behind, and also the driving for those behaviors change. But at the end of the day, I think that really being genuine and understanding the people's challenges, understand the different type of the channel, and also the business challenge, that helps us to understand deeper the consumer needs.
Okay, Thank you for sharing. Nikhil, same question to you. What are you doing to kind of focus in on your the needs of your target audience? How are you understanding them better?
Yeah, I think if you look at even in Southeast Asia, every country is different, right? There are so many details, and when you appreciate the smaller details, you're able to look at why the bigger picture is happening. For example, the country that's hit the most is Philippines. And here we see that a lot of the lower SEC consumers are impacted badly by the pandemic. And they're replacing snacking with leftover food, leftover rice, leftover noodles. So what do we do then? And we have brands like Cheese Whiz or Eden, and they become great toppings for those food. And that's what we are kind of looking at driving. And as Angela mentioned, in addition to the traditional sources of information, we are beginning to do a lot of social listening. We are using our employees because they're there in the markets, and what's happening with the neighbors, what's happening with the relatives, what's happening with their friends. And finally, we have this platform that we call Portkey, where we're able to directly connect with consumers. And if you want to refine our insights or understand that better, it's easy to just, through video conference, connect with 4 or 5 of them and get deeper into that.
I'm so impressed that you're actually listening to your employees and what they have to say, because this is such an important part of every organization. And we're always talking about listening to the consumer, but not often do we take a step back and say, what do our own people have to say about our marketing or our products? That's really impressive. So kudos to you and the team for that. I see some questions already coming in from the floor, guys. If you want to send your questions, feel free to do so. We'll be taking a few of them towards the end of the panel. So keep sending in your questions to us. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my attention back to you, David. How do you have a unified view of your target audience? I know Unilever is very sophisticated in this. How do you draw on the current and the past media engagements along with all the myriad of online and offline channels?
So do we have that view? Yes, kind of. I mean, we've worked very hard to create a single data lake. Most packaged goods companies have sales data and marketing data, and the two never meet. So bringing those together is a huge win. And I think we're not alone in doing that. And of course, collectively, the industry is now at the start of a major push to collect first-party data. We're going to need that for the post-cookie world, and in the newly dealing with all the new regulations around privacy. So that's really important. But I think there are some really big opportunities, though, in the open web in particular that we should be thinking about going forward. So I think there's a great opportunity for, especially in Southeast Asia, actually, for MarTech, AdTech, and a lot of the platforms to really come together and try and create a single view of our consumers and a single reach curve, please, so that we can actually connect with them. And I think there are some very encouraging moves going on in that area at the moment. So that's one thing. I think also O2O, whatever that means, if it's online to offline or offline to offline or all of the above, is going to be a very important part of what we do. And I can just think immediately with people like Grab, our hosts today, if I can understand people's travel patterns and the purpose of that travel, or if we can infer the purpose of that travel, that gives us a great opportunity to serve a different kind of message to them, which will be relevant and useful to them and good for business. The last piece of this, though, for me is, and the thing we really need to close out, is the return path on the sale. So we got a really good idea around the world now, online, about the journey that people take to get to the basket in e-commerce. And then how much of that actually continues onto the checkout is where the information is highly variable, and it depends a lot on having partners at the e-commerce platforms who really understand that when we know that, the basket size we can bring them is so much bigger. So that there's a conversation still to be had and completed about getting hold of that information.
And Dave, I want to ask you this question as well, because you work with a myriad of clients, as I mentioned earlier, small companies, big companies. How are you kind of helping them to create this single customer view, and how difficult is it for them?
Yeah, I'll first bridge off a point that David made before. I think we're uniquely positioned in the O2O space, given the size of our mobility fleet and also what's happening in terms of online ordering and e-commerce.
Yeah.
What I think is unique, and if I look at my career, I was at a number of social media companies. I've essentially worked for all of them. These companies do a really good job of serving brands signals based off of interaction and engagement on their platforms. These are excellent signals. I want to be really clear about that. What I think is unique, though, about the signals that we're picking up is these are rooted in real-world transactional experiences. Ultimately, every marketer wants to do the same thing at the end of the day, and that's to sell a product or service. And so that's where I think it's unique is as we continue to see movement on our app, we've seen a 5x increase in terms of MART volume in Singapore in the last 6 months. This is informing us and then equipping us to service our clients and agency partners even more effectively as we carefully and respectfully gather data to help inform what messages that we put in front of our consumers from a brand perspective. And what I also think is really interesting about that, once again, coming from a social media background, is there was always this conversation about when does the ad interrupt the content experience? But the reality of it is on Grab, the content experience is the brand.
Yeah.
So this is a platform in which people have a transactional mindset, and they actually want to hear from brands, because the only reason that they're going to Grab is to interact with brands or to go places in which they can interact with brands.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you're using the app, be it for transport or delivery or food delivery, you're always leaning in, right? You're the one who's actually looking and searching for those answers. So there's already that engagement there that many other platforms strive to replicate.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm going to take some polls from our audience members. It's time for you guys to get involved as well. I want to ask a couple of questions that's going to set the stage for our next few questions. The first question is, given the lower frequency of store visits these days, would you like to have more avenues to try out new products, such as having them delivered to your home or having an easy access to accessible locations nearby to your home? Would you like to have more avenues to try out new products? Let's see what the answers are. Oh, of course, it's a yes. Let's see what else people are saying. Okay. There is an overwhelming number of people who want more avenues to try out new products. We're seeing some no's. Okay, I'd like to know why. Feel free to let us know in the chat as well, but there is a 97% of you who say yes to this. All right, okay, I'm gonna take the next question. And this one is for our brand marketer friends tuning in. For brand marketers, are you facing challenges in launching new products given the COVID-19 situation? Are you facing challenges? Let's take a look at what the answers are. I suppose it must be really challenging. What about you guys? Do you think that you're facing a lot of challenge when it comes to new products and getting people to use it?
I think the biggest challenge on launches and innovation generally is it's very hard to be innovative when you're not face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can all keep the machine running pretty efficiently, and we've all learned that. Yeah, but you don't get those serendipitous moments. You don't get those just happy accidents that are part of the creative process.
Yeah.
Same?
Yeah, same. So the idea is already a challenge because there is no physical interaction. So that's one. And then when you actually launch it, the trial generation, it becomes very, very difficult because in the past, the demonstration, the wet sampling were able to be done.
Yeah.
And now we have to think about creative ways of doing it, and then see that from the various different channels, as just now the question put on, how and where we can get the trials.
Yeah. I agree. And you know what is funny? I also miss the water cooler conversations that happen in offices, which suddenly give you that, that moment of, hey, why don't we try this? It just isn't, I mean, I love all things digital, but sometimes it just isn't the same as we are right now, sitting around having a conversation. I think a large part of our audience are seeing that there is a little bit of barrier to coming up with new products and getting people to actually try that. We've got 90% of you who said yes, about 10% who said no. Dave, maybe I can turn my attention to you. How have you seen clients change the way they work with you when it comes to new products?
Well, what's interesting is we kind of did a similar poll, actually, with some of the folks up here. And we talked about sampling as probably one of the more effective ways for marketers to introduce products. But that's kind of a challenge right now. When people go to stores, they're in and out. There's restrictions on how many bodies can even be in the building.
Yeah.
We actually saw this as an opportunity to create a full funnel marketing solution that is centered around sampling, but is not just sampling.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is if we look at sampling 1.0, I get off on the subway. There's a lady or a gentleman who's going to hand me a product. I grab the product and I'm off into the wind. What we do know is there's high rates of me sampling the product, trying the product, and there's a pretty good chance that I'll actually buy it again because who doesn't love free stuff? So we've taken that concept of sampling as a way to introduce a new brand. But not only that, I'll come to that in a second. And what we're doing here is we're using digital assets first to create brand awareness. Hey, there's a new product in market. And through that ad, people can click on it and opt in to be given a sample. Then we utilize our offline arms, which is our fleets, right? Whether it's our mobility fleet, whether it's food delivery, whether it's grocery delivery, to actually get sampling in the hands of individuals. We can then retarget those people.
Yeah.
Because once again, there's that piece missing in sampling 1.0 where I go from the subway station to my home, and then how do you get a hold of me? How do you hope to retarget me?
Yeah.
But there's no need to hope now
Yeah.
because we can certainly retarget that person. And then there's an additional step in which we actually have an internal brand lift study mechanism, which we can then transform, and we can allow our marketing partners to then ask questions. Did you like it? Would you buy it again? Whatever question they might want to do. What's really interesting, though, is we've started to have conversations around sampling with a number of brands, and it's not just new products. It's actually stalwart products that have been around for decades.
Oh, wow.
And I think what's happening right now is because we have more time on our hands as consumers, we are, number one, more open to new products. As a result, I think for certain brands, if you're not staying front and centered, there is also the danger that you might get replaced because it is a competitive marketplace. So we're actually hearing brands kind of voice that sentiment of, yeah, we want to talk to you about the new stuff, but we also want to make sure that the brands that have built us in Southeast Asia continue to be the pillars that we can rest on.
Yeah, I love that example, Dave. I never thought of it that way. I'm usually the ones to take a sample and run away and never come back. And now you've got a clear mode of attribution that this is what is leading to your sales at the end of the day. So I love that example. Nikhil, I want to touch on this with you a little bit. How are you creatively overcoming barriers such as social distancing and safe measurement measures?
Yeah, I think the answer to how are innovations able to be successful, the answer is in two stages. First, I think, as I said earlier, there is a gravitation towards the core. We've never seen the core grow at such high double digit, like whether it's Oreo or Tang or Halls or Cadbury, known brands that have been there for 100+ years. I think in every market we're seeing that go up. But as Dave mentioned, I think the role for innovation has got even stronger. I think what has changed is in the earlier marketers like myself are guilty of spraying and praying. We'd launch a lot of things out and hope it'll win and people will try it out. That's curtailed heavily. So things that are very strategic are working. A couple of examples there are when we re-express brands like Oreo. We have just launched Oreo Choco Pie in Vietnam and Oreo Wafer in Indonesia. Runaway success, doing really well. So a favorite brand doing extremely, expressed as a different format, doing well. Another place where we're finding success is when we take much loved brands and get local flavors on them. We launched Cadbury Dairy Milk Durian, which did very well. We launched Tang Coco Pandan, which did so well. We are also just now going to launch Cadbury Dairy Milk Coco Pandan in time for Merdeka in Malaysia.
Okay.
So, I mean, those local flavors do well. Another area where we're finding success is when brands get together. We launched Halls Red Bull in Thailand, which has been, I mean, Halls is not doing very well, but this has just helped Halls get a new lease of life.
Yeah.
I mean, Red Bull in Thailand is an iconic brand.
Yes,
and,
of course.
two brands, quintessentially Thai brands coming together has been very successful. So, yeah, how strategic and how insights-led are you?
Yeah, I love that example because it just shows that we're in this economy of collaboration right now. And it's all these brand partnerships that really get consumers very excited, right? A couple of years ago, I think my team was super excited when they saw Sephora partner with Stabilo, the highlighters, right? And they were going crazy and they're buying all these different colors. I'm like, are you even going to wear blue on a Monday on your eye? And they're like, no, it doesn't matter because it's just the adoration for these iconic brands that we also grew up with. So I love that example. Thank you for that. I also want to touch on a little bit with you, Nikhil, around demanding new content that consumers, we're in the golden era of content right now, right? As marketers, we're not just competing against each other, we're competing with the likes of production houses, influencers. What are you doing to kind of deal with this incredible pace at which we need content?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, right? I think even before the pandemic, I think what has been changing from Gen X to Gen Y to Gen Z has been the span of attention. As a Gen X classical marketer, I'm used to the 30-second, the 45-second, and the 60-second. That became, the 5-second or the 15-second as we moved to YouTube and Facebook. Now with TikTok growing and YouTube also coming with shorts, I think we are looking at really small pieces of content. And how do you tell a full story? How do you get branding, engagement, cut-throughs with that as a challenge? I think with our creative agency partners, we've been able to do well there. But the second part to this answer is the exact opposite is also true. For Mother's Day, we launched great piece of work for Eden Cheese in Philippines for Mother's Day. And it was 3.5 minutes. It had like so much of traction. So we started classifying that it is not just going with where the flow is, but segmenting your content into meal, snack, and bite. And longer form content, your mid form content, and really short form content.
Okay, so it's how you kind of slice and dice the different types of creatives that you come up with creatively in a way.
I think there's room for all of them.
Yeah.
Depending on the category, the brand, and the target audience.
Yeah, fair enough. Angela, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, so I think I agree with what Nikhil said. And beside this one, what I see is that, yes, we talk about speed, pace. But however, I mean that the new generation being genuine is extremely important. So the moment that if the content is not seen as authentic, they can pick up very, very easily. Yeah. So beside this one, I think that dealing with the dynamic and also fast pace of the content, what we observe is that our younger staff, employee in the team are extremely important. If they are passionate about the brand, passionate about the content, and working together with the agency, they will be able to come up with a lot more faster and the authentic content because they feel so strong about the brand.
Yeah, I agree with you. We had a panel discussion recently, and we were talking about, this incredible need for content, which might sometimes lead to burnout. But the minute your brand kind of stands for a purpose that your employees can get on board with, the mindset just shifts, right? When you align yourselves or your brand to what your employees are feeling, they don't think of it like, oh, this is another banner ad I have to create or another piece of blog post I have to write. It's something they actually genuinely believe in. So I completely agree with that point that you just spoke about. Now, I know we've got about 10 more minutes. So I'm going to ask this question to you, David, before I take some questions from the floor. How are you leveraging insights to create meaningful loyalty triggers or effective messaging?
Thanks. And I'll talk to you about the effective messaging most, I think, because the loyalty triggers, when I first learned marketing, I was taught loyalty was everything. It's cheaper to keep someone than to lose, than to gain a new customer. But actually what we've learned, and I think what Ehrenberg Bass really just demystified in how brands grow, is what really matters is reaching out to new light users in the category and bringing them in. So frankly, I'm more interested in reach than loyalty. If you build a great value exchange with the public and you've got a great purpose that attracts them to the brand in the first place, that's what will keep them there. So I don't think there's as much science to that as art. And we're structured now to really, with our single data lake and our people data centers and our digital hubs, to do some really smart stuff with data. And I wanted to give you 2 quick examples from Lifebuoy hand wash, which is a fabulous brand. Obviously, it's grown massively during the pandemic. At the start of the pandemic, we were searching and using Google Insights to understand what were people looking for. And they weren't looking for information about soap. They were looking for the best technique to use to wash their hands. So instead of running regular commercials, we co-created a public information film with Google to explain that to them. And it's highly effective. And we actually use it now in our Back to the Office package for any of you who are lucky enough to be returning to work at Unilever in your actual offices in the future. The one that most impressed me with Lifebuoy, and I saw it on my last trip to India, is a thing called the Data Lighthouse, and you can search it up on YouTube. There's loads of cases, but basically they break India down into 1 kilometer squares and use all publicly available data, and they analyze it to predict in that square what is likely to be the next communicable disease that's coming down the line, and then to tailor their messaging to mothers in those areas, so they're giving them something that's hyper local, hyper relevant, and it's really, really successful.
Thank you for sharing that. I remember a Lifebuoy ad out of Singapore that happened, I think, in the midst of the pandemic. So I'm Bangladeshi by birth, and there was an ad for the first time in Singapore that I saw an ad in Bengali. And I think it was done by one of your social media agencies. And, I remember seeing it and feeling like, wow, it's really lovely to have something that's in my native language, which I've never seen in Singapore all my life living here, right? So I think it's that localization as well that you guys do brilliantly. And over in Bangladesh, if you go to any house, you're going to see a Lifebuoy. It's part and parcel of our lives, right? So it's fantastic that you did that. I want to take some questions from the floor. I see some questions coming in. Kenneth has a lot of votes on his question. So his question is, how has the consumer going online affected business, especially small businesses? And what would be the first thing that small business owners need to shift or change to be able to survive and thrive during this period? Dave, do you want to take this?
Yeah, so one of the things I really enjoy about being at Grab is, of course, as a company, we're trying to make money, full stop. But it's ingrained into our system to pursue this double profit line where we're trying to empower everyday entrepreneurs. When the pandemic hit, we really shifted our business, right? We're known for mobility. We're known for rideshare. We were not known for food delivery. We were not known for grocery delivery when this started, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So one of the biggest challenges was onboarding these everyday entrepreneurs, the small mom and pop shops. And we understood that the best way to do that in a mobile society, which Southeast Asia is to create a specific app in which the merchants can use to track sales, to communicate, to market. And so we invested heavily and we continue to invest in that. The goal and the aim is, how do we not only be good partners for our commercial merchants, but our SMB merchants, and probably even more importantly, the long tail. And I think that's going to be the true signal of success for us is, can we help these everyday entrepreneurs onboard into the digital age? Because the reality of it is, now that we've crossed that line, we are never going back. So it's a necessity for them to move over to the digital side. And I'm very proud of the efforts that the Grab team has done to get them over that line.
Yeah, I see a lot more merchants now, a little bit more savvy as well in the way they're communicating, even through your platform. So kudos to the team for doing that as well. I want to take the next question from Christine Paul. Are you seeing a lot of shifts in consumer loyalties during these times? What are some of your loyalty-based strategies to retain customers? Nikhil, can I throw that at you?
Yeah, very similar to what David mentioned in the beginning. I think definitely people are gravitating towards big brands, but I think we're not working towards loyalty. I think in every category, there is a natural degree of churn, on average between 20 to 30%. They will leave the category. They'll come back after a few years maybe. And it's about, how do you keep recruiting? How do you keep the recruiting strategy on? Which is difficult at this time, but I think our entire focus is on penetration. How can we keep driving that?
Okay. I see a question coming in from Dom. Dom is asking, if we oppose modern retail and online delivery, how will FMCG brands handle product trials online or product sampling? Angela, do you want to take that?
Well, yeah, sure. Just now we were talking about the sampling. So Dave gave a very good example on the how to leverage on the Grab or different other channels that we can use. Because that there are full pack. You can't do the web samplings anymore. But then it really depends on the product and also the target consumer audience. Who are you targeting at? Through different channels, you can do the paid sampling, full pack, and retargeting them. So there are various channels that you can do that. Even with the offline places or channels, that it still can be implemented. So it really depends on how the marketeers see that, and also how creatively we evaluate the channels and where we go for. And then also looking at retargeting, checking in, getting the feedbacks from the consumer for those trials and sampling.
Thank you, Angela. One more question from Bella. Bella is saying, from the behavior of consumers these days, what about penetration and movement for all of you in the digital environment now? As we know, technological digital challenges are very big now and very competitive with offline retail. So I guess it's kind of like the balance. David, I'm going to throw this at you, the balance between online and offline, given that it's so competitive.
I think so in terms of balance, we just need to stay fluid now. I talked right at the beginning about how fast-moving consumer goods got faster during the pandemic, and we got to keep that pace up because the movements are so sudden these days. So our planning cycles are rapidly reducing and just being hyper responsive to the market. Within the digital space, I think, and it goes back to talking about advice for entrepreneurs, I think there's no substitute for shopping the category on a daily basis with your morning tea and understanding exactly what's going on in your category, on the platforms you choose to work on, and basically it even is your own entire digital ecosystem working faultlessly.
Yeah, fair enough. Ashwin has a question. Ashwin is asking, putting the consumer in the center of the business operations now is imperative. However, from a supply chain standpoint, where do you see the implementation of unified commerce in retail, and how critical has it become in the post-pandemic setting? Also, can you highlight the technological changes large conglomerates face as opposed to boutique retail outlets? So maybe I'll start with the first one. Nikhil or Angela, do you want to take that? Where do you see the implementation of unified commerce in retail, and how critical has it become in the post-pandemic setting?
Yeah, I mean, very broadly, I'm not a supply chain expert, but I think very broadly, supply chain is the other part of the business that has been hugely affected.
Yes.
I think whether it is getting raw materials into the factory, we have had a huge surge in container traffic, and it's impossible to get a container for the first 6 months of this year, to being able to get workers safely into our factories, which is affected by the entire area is affected by COVID. And how do you manufacture and how do you get the finished product to trade has been the biggest challenge. I think managing the basics of supply chain has been a very big challenge. I think we have implemented a set of things, and I think we spoke a lot about empathy with consumers. I think what we have implemented is how can we be empathetic to our workers in the factory? For example, in places like Vietnam, we've hired hotel rooms and tents for them so that they can stay in a safe place close to the factory and don't need to risk themselves for commuting.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do that kind of investment, creative thinking at every stage of the integrated supply chain to overcome this.
Angela, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, before the pandemic, I think we talk about BCP, but it was never that important. It's everybody has a BCP in the company, but it's just
something there.
Yeah. So now it became really, really real, and we all are very serious about the BCP, continuous supply, supplying from various different factories, making sure that all the products are ready with the regulatory and also all the raw materials, etc. But of course, on top of that, we will need to see that our inventory policies, and then as well that to stay dynamic and agile. Okay. So it's like everything that we keep monitoring of the situation in terms of the channel shifting, the product, the SKU portfolio, the supply chain, and just have to be keeping agile on that.
Yeah. And Dave, I want to ask you the second part of that question, which is a comparison between conglomerates and boutique retail outlets. Can you highlight if the tech changes or challenges are bigger for large conglomerates as compared to smaller boutique? That's a very interesting question.
It is interesting. I mean, size has its advantages and disadvantages, right? So the conglomerates are probably better equipped, but they might move slower. Our aim, once again, through creation of mobile apps for merchants, is to kind of allow for that bridge into digital to happen. But there, of course, is a learning curve. So I'm not necessarily sure if either one is, let's put it this way, both of them has various challenges to cross the bridges. I think they're very different challenges, but what is certain is they both need to make that journey, right? Regardless. I would say that the smaller everyday entrepreneur is probably less aware of it, simply because the CTO is the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, and the COO. Yeah. But everybody needs to be cognizant that happens. And the good news is with aggregation apps like Grab and our competitors, we use proximity to make the neighborhood store still. Yeah. So your neighborhood store could be, a huge cold storage, which is mine, or it could be a neighborhood Warung. Yeah. And that is what technology allows us to do, and proper targeting is we allow the neighborhood stores to remain in that same setting.
Yeah. So you're not just lost in the sea of brands out there.
Yeah, there is a level of familiarity and trust that technology allows us to bridge.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you this question as well, Dave. Moving forward, what will personalization at scale look like for us?
Yeah, I mean, you know, increasingly, I think first-party data matters. I mean, there's a number of conversations around Unified 2.0, all these things that we're still figuring out. On the Grab side, we are obviously paying attention to those. But I think first-party data, number one, has always been the most trusted source of data. It's the best protection for users. It's the most trusted for brands. Ultimately, the way that we look at it is we can observe real, actual consumer behavior. So I actually have a Cadbury durian chocolate bar in my fridge. And what we could do with that on Grab is we can also target a mouthwash as well, because that might come in handy after I eat that delicious durian Cadbury delight. And so that's how it continues to evolve for us. I think data isn't useful unless you understand the narrative and the insights and the storyline that can be told and applied to that. Data is just a bunch of numbers until you start to use creativity to figure out how can I use this to reach consumers, to position my brand, to inform and create impulse as well as behavior that becomes set.
Absolutely. David, do you have anything to add to that? What do you think personalization at scale will look for us?
Yeah, I just want to building on Dave's point. I think there's something else there, which is how you acquire your first party data. The value exchange between you, the brand and the public is absolutely vital. You know, because if somebody feels spammed or stalked, they are being spammed or stalked, and it doesn't matter one jot how legally and compliantly you acquired their data in the first place. It's how they feel that matters, because this is supposed to be a relationship. And when you acquire it in the right way with the right ideals, you can do all sorts of things. So we use artificial intelligence in North America to help develop personalized acne treatments, which is based on the individual's molecular structure. And that's a very personal piece of information to hand over. Back in the Philippines, Dove Baby on our own online store, mothers, the value exchanges, they give us their newborn child's name, and we give them Dove Baby product, which is emblazoned with their name rather than Dove's, which brings joy to the family. But people don't hand over their children's names willy-nilly. So getting that value exchange right, I think, will now be an integral part of the annual brand planning cycle, and it will involve our agencies, because it has to be, you know, it's a creative process as well.
Absolutely. All parties have to be involved from the very beginning itself. I know we're running out of time, so my last question, and it's going to go out to all of you. What do you think your post-COVID marketing strategy will look like? David, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thanks. I think the biggest thing that's landing in Asia, in Southeast Asia at the moment, and I've got a shopping list of things that are, but the biggest single thing I believe is the sinification of our e-commerce. You know, Chinese e-commerce is really a digitized version of the shopping mall, where you go for fun and you go with friends, whereas Western e-commerce is largely a digital version of the shopping catalog. And they're very, very different environments. And if you want to succeed online now, we're going to need to have to understand, you know, how live streaming, how the introduction of KOLs or influencers affects that process, and the massive content that you need to be able to play out on the big festival days. So that's, if I had to single one thing out, it's that with gaming bolted onto it. Probably.
Oh, sounds exciting.
Yeah,
Can't wait to see. Angela, what about you?
Yeah, so similar as David. I think beside this one, I see that if we really go into the post-pandemic, then the O2O will also become a lot more important, because people will continue to consume a lot more online. E-commerce will continue to grow and be more entertaining, but then also linking back to the offline. So online, offline, how does this interaction happen, and what are the things that we can do, thinking ahead of the time, using or pioneering into the O2O.
Thank you, Angela. Nikhil?
No, I agree with that. I think in the how, I would say we are being cautiously optimistic. I think we have the strong brands benefited a lot during the pandemic. And as things ease up, people get back to normal lives and they're able to sample and try all different kinds of snacks. what does it mean for Mondelēz? So we're preparing for that. What are the right kind of segment participation that we need? What are the right kind of innovations? What are the right kind of content that we will need for that? In terms of media, yes, definitely the future is unified, and how do we connect our personalization at scale to first-party data all the way to e-commerce and create this virtuous loop. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of the panelists summed it up very well. Like, there will be more O2O for sure.
Yeah.
But the online portion doesn't go away. The other thing, like very specific to the vertical that we're discussing with FMCG, when everything opens up, clearly people will be going grocery shopping more often in person, but that might not be their first thought and destination. Mine is to get on a plane and go somewhere. And I think digital still will offer that convenience. So though I clearly and absolutely expect that our mobility business will take off again and people will be going places, it's a question of where they're going.
Yeah.
So I think using this as an opportunity to continue to strengthen your digital approach for FMCG is critical, because this type of behavior isn't going away. And it's simply because of the convenience of it moving forward versus what currently has forced us is a safety issue. But the convenience is everything. Last night, 10 p.m., after we put my kids to bed, my wife and I are doing what? Buying groceries, because we just didn't have time to go to the store during the day.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I absolutely agree. The future is going to be hybrid. And just like this show, it's kind of hybrid. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And with that, our hour is up. I can't believe it was so quick. Thank you so much for joining in. It was a genuine pleasure hosting this conversation. I want to thank all our amazing panelists for their insights and their honesty and their experience as well. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to the team at GrabAds for hosting us and making this entire session possible. We're gonna flash a slide up on the screen with a list of Grab contacts in your region. You can also download it in the handouts tab. So do feel free to reach out to a representative in your area to learn more about how GrabAds can help you get closer to cracking the code. They are immensely friendly people. You will not be disappointed, and they have so much to say and so much to offer. And also, we'd love it if you could take 2 minutes to just fill out our simple feedback form. It should be a pop-up on your screen right now. There's a link there. So tell us what we did right, what we can improve on, and what you'd like to hear from us next. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, see you on marketinginteractive.com. Take care. Bye.